Ghost Hunting 101. So whether you are, and if you guys are freaking out about not being able to see the chat, I believe if you hover at the top, you should be able to see the chat room. If not, I'll minimize everything and all that good stuff. But anyway, so Ghost Hunting 101. How many folks here are seasoned paranormal investigators? Or you've been on a ghost hunt before, even if it was even a walking candlelight tour around Gettysburg. How many of you have participated in something like this before? Yep, Amanda, Tammy, yeah, Michael, many years, yep. Okay, so I got some seasoned people, so which is great. Which gives me an idea of how I'm going to address all of you. So good stuff. Good to know. Oh, got two more. All right, couple ghost walks. All right, nice, Elizabeth. Okay. Very good. Hey, Michael. So just a disclaimer, all the ideas and topics presented here are property of APS. Obviously, y'all can do your own research and find the same stuff, too. Any personal opinions, thoughts, and theories are under copyright and protected by intellectual property laws. So basically, don't take this webinar and copy the PowerPoint slides, copy exactly what I'm doing right now, or use this video and put it on your own YouTube channel, pretty much. Anyway, so, and also taking this class does not equal to an endorsement from APS. So basically, don't go around saying, hey, you know, I took a class from APS and they think I'm like the best ever and I'm going to go trespass on this private property. Yeah, don't do it. Anyway, so let's go ahead and keep going. There we go. Who am I? For those of you who don't know me, and I'm really not saying this to be egotistical or anything, but you're probably wondering, who is this chick and why is she telling me about paranormal stuff? So I'm the founder and director of APS. I've been investigating since I was 16 years old. I've authored 3 paranormal books, and as we know now, was featured recently on Travel Channel's Most Terrifying Places in America, talking about ghosties. And I guess if you were to ask me what my specialty is, I look at the relationship between hauntings and what the context and societal trends of the deceased time and what it means to them. Yeah, so feel free to use the chat, guys. Introduce yourselves. Let me know who you are, and my cat is going to come up and say hello in just a moment. This is why I don't normally use this platform, because you know, I hope y'all don't mind a cat. It is a free webinar too, so she just, and she's purring, so she just kind of does this. Anyway, if you guys want background on this poor little thing, well, she's not a poor little thing, but she was abandoned by her original owner about 4 years ago, and then I got her, and then now she is very clingy. So she does not like to be alone. So when I do stuff like this, hi, Sharon from Kansas, California. Oh, Valley Spirit Communications, very cool. Yes, Amanda, she is my baby. So she's about 13 years old and she almost died a few months ago. So anyway, enough about the cat. We'll get started. I'm hoping she'll lose interest and she'll want to go down. Anyway, so let's talk about a few things. Let's talk about, where do ghosts come from? I don't literally mean from a scientific standpoint. Go back. I mean where do ghosts come from? As I mentioned, yes, Amanda did take that picture of me. Speaking from someone who does specialize from a more of an anthropological standpoint of the paranormal, I like to look at where society has evolved when it comes to our relationship with ghosts, and I think that has a big impact in the way that we investigate. So if we look at it from a religious aspect, you know, one of the very first religions, and those of you who took the ghost lore class, you know that you heard me say this, talk about animism. It was one of the world's first religions, and it came with the belief that everything has a soul, or some sort of energy or vibration. So, and that's even inanimate objects. So, I mean, as I like to quote Pocahontas, um, everything has a life, has a spirit, has a way. Um, so this was very influential for indigenous tribes, indigenous people, you know, when, if you look at, I'm not going to go into whole anthropology 101 here, but the way that religions have been created and evolved, animism created a really strong foundation for that. You know, you might have noticed how different tribes around the world have like statues of similar looking gods, or deities or spirits, or I mean, I just keep going off from the spiritual aspect. You know, why is that? That's the stuff that I like to research. You know, what was going on at the time. So, and we still have animism type beliefs in the paranormal today. I mean, we have haunted objects, land being haunted, the stone tape theory. Even though it's debatable and has its own issues, the stone tape theory is a very familiar concept for a lot of paranormal investigators. So oral tradition, that's one of the biggest reasons why we have our belief in ghosts today. It's because we had these legends and lore, I talked about in the previous class, that set the foundation down for how we know and think of ghosts today. Because early man believed in ghosts. I mean, even before, you know, the Roman Empire, before ancient Greece, you know, when you think of a spiritual aspect from an animism standpoint, then you think about, okay, what happens to the soul when we die? That's been the never-ending mystery that we've all had for, I dare I say, millions of years. So anyway, let me keep going with this. There we go. So I mentioned this previous class, and I think it's worth mentioning again. I'm really going to do the abridged version. So one of the first ghost stories that I found particularly interesting came from Pliny the Younger. It is a story of Athena Doris, and it's one of the earliest recorded ghost stories. And so basically, man buys a house really cheap in Athens. I always joke that all the greatest ghost stories start with, I bought this place really cheap. The first night that the man moves in, he sees this ghost in chains. I'm so sorry, guys. She's very clingy right now. So he sees this ghost in chains, man with a long beard, very, not looking great. And he was beckoning, Athena Doris to follow him. And so Athena Doris, I swear he must have been like a ghost hunter or something. He follows the ghost, and the ghost takes him to this, I don't want to say backyard, but like this courtyard type place. And he stands on this spot, and then he disappears. And Athena Doris marks the spot where he saw the ghost disappear. And then the next morning, he gets the town magistrates and guards to dig up that hole. And lo and behold, they find a skeleton. So this man had been murdered. The skeleton was covered in chains. So, and then Athena Doris never saw that ghost again. So, I find the chains aspect really interesting because Aristotle believed that what weighs the soul down is our, I guess you can call sins or misgivings, the way that we acted in life. They each, equal to a chain on our souls. And the heavier our chains are, the more our soul is earthbound. So and this is back in Aristotle's time. So Cicero had a belief in the afterlife. So he believed that there was like a whole underworld type place happening. And if you want to check that out, check out the previous class. As I mentioned before writing, there was oral tradition. Performance of these stories. So like I think Pliny the Younger was, I believe, probably the first one that was probably the first one that put everything down on paper. She's such a goober. So I believe this might have been probably a local legend. If it was a true story, then that's, really awesome. So we talked about Aristotle. Lucian, you could call him the skeptic of the time. He ridiculed belief in the paranormal. which that doesn't tell me that the paranormal doesn't exist, but it tells me that even back then there was a belief in the afterlife and ghosts. Roman Plautus wrote a play called Monsteralia, which talks a lot about ghosts. And what I find interesting about, if you read these ghost stories from like ancient Greece and Rome, you find that there's this formula for for the classic ghost stories that we know of today. So I'm glad you guys think this is cool, because this is like the nerdy stuff that I love. It's the nerdy stuff that I love, and it influences a lot about how I approach investigations. So anyway, there's some ghost hunting basics, and like I said, this is ghost hunting 101. I'm not going to be covering like extensive, detailed things. I'm currently developing an advanced ghost hunting class, which is going to take different different case situations, and I have this whole idea that one day will manifest. So ghost hunting basics, we have things like location, history, equipment, questions or communication, trigger objects. How do you know if a ghost is communicating with you? So very basic stuff, but depending on how you guys, handle the content, we can always expand on that. All right, which location should you choose? That's probably one of the biggest things. So when you're scouting out a location, whether it is for public reasons or you are doing a residential case, you always have to be mindful of the location that you select. Is it a historical place? Is it some place that's brand new? And so a place that is brand new, it doesn't necessarily mean it's not haunted or it doesn't warrant for an investigation. I can't tell you how many cases I have done personally where the houses were built in less than 5 years. They're less than 5 years old. So it's always the land. One of my team members, Jenny, she mentioned, we only know that location's history, based on what we can find documentation-wise, which is great. But you have to think that, how old is the Earth? I mean, you got to think how old the Earth is. And there was an entire history on that land millions of years before we even set foot on it. So that's why... So that's why I'm not always willing to dismiss like newer places or places that haven't been investigated, because you just don't know. You don't know. When you're doing an investigation, you have to think about the context. So this is why I have benevolent versus malevolent. There are public locations that are very positive, like going to that location is like, you're talking to old friends type of thing. There's a location in North Carolina that we go to often, the Trivia Clinic. I mean, it's like seeing old friends. It's a very benevolent haunting. I mean, there's nothing bad there. I mean, so there's nothing bad there. So, however, you are reading my mind, Amanda. However, there's also some malevolent places. We did a meetup investigation in St. Albans 2 years ago, two or 3 years ago. And unfortunately, there were some people who couldn't handle that place. Not saying necessarily there was something negative there, but, well, I wouldn't say, let me rephrase that. There wasn't, in my opinion, there's nothing evil there. However, there are negative things there. And depending on what your mindset is at the time, going to a haunting where there are negative spirits there might not be good for you. I did a blog for APS not too long ago about self-care in the paranormal, and measuring out whether a place is good to go to or not, that's a big deal. For me, I have to be incredibly mindful now of what places I go to, because I got a medical diagnosis in July that affects the way that I investigate. I mean, some people may say, oh, it's not a big deal, but I mean, I'm a diabetic, so I have to be very careful when I investigate. I have to practice a lot of self-care to make sure that I'm not passing out in the middle of an investigation. So So I have to keep in mind about that. I have yet to experiment with a negative haunting since my diagnosis, at least from a public location standpoint. But if you go someplace like the Thomas House, I believe the Thomas House is in Tennessee. I haven't been there, but I've heard so many things about it. I mean, I was working at events like for that. I was working for that event, but I didn't get a chance to actually go. And the group that I was with at the time that was there, they actually had to call off the investigation early because things were getting thrown at them, like, and not like playful, like, haha. I was like, no, I'm gonna throw this candlestick at your head. So it's like, you know, yeah. So you have to think about stuff like that. Like if you want to go to Bobby Mackey's and pull a Zach Bagans and, you know, open or go into the portal of hell, you might. I mean, if that's something you want to do, I'm not going to say it's great, but if you want to do that, just make sure, like, you have the means to get out of it with your sanity. By the way, I don't think the portal of hell is at Bobby Mackey's, but as an example. You also want to think about cost. I think what a lot of people don't realize, and she's so snagged on my shirt right now, I think what a lot of people don't realize is that ghost hunting can be very expensive. We're scouting out a few locations for where we want to go in 2019, and one of the places we want to go to is $175 per person. Anyway, gosh, everyone's like all reacting and stuff. It's funny to read. Anyway, but it's $175. It's a bucket list place that I am gritting my teeth about paying, but if you want to go to the big locations, you're fixing to pay like anywhere between like $50 to $100, if not more. There are a few places that will charge you like $50 and you can be there for like 12 hours, which is awesome. Or there's places that'll charge you like $150 and you can only be there for 4 hours. So you have to keep those numbers in mind and see what is worth for you. Tammy, you can go, USS Hornet. Okay, I've had crazy experiences there, but that is way too expensive. I think I paid maybe $100 for mine. But I think it's because, yeah, I think it's because you got the celebrity thing in there, which, you know, that depends if something that, if I have time at the end, I'll tell the story of what I experienced there. Anyway, and also you always want to get permission. Always get permission. I will say this right now, always get permission to be at a location or know the rules of the location so that if you're there at the middle of the night, you know you can be there in the middle of the night. I'll give you an example. I was in Gettysburg, I think this must have been 4 years ago. I was there for a paranormal convention. $25 really to ghost hunt, or is it for a ghost tour, Sharon? Anyway, I'm curious. So anyway, I was in Gettysburg about 4 years ago. It was about, it was April, so daylight savings time, the next round, a tour, that makes sense. It was daylight savings time. It hadn't kicked in yet, so it was still getting dark at like 7. The park signs at the time had it was open until 8 or 9. So we were totally there, like legally, like it was at the time, but we went to Devil's Den. It was dark and the park rangers rolled up. No park rangers, it was the state troopers. State troopers rolled up. And this is having a cat, guys. I think this is the exact definition of having a cat. And it's going to be a bigger battle if I pull her down. So they were accusing us of trespassing, and I said, you know, while I wasn't trying to freak out, I had to tell the officer, like, no, if you look, we are here legally, it's okay. If you look at the sign, it says that the hours are until 8, I think it was 8 or 9 at the time. And he just looks at me, he's like, oh, really now? And we had to walk to that sign because it was actually not that far from Devil's Den, but he made us walk all the way over, like, to one of the gates, like to one of the signs that was around the area, and had to show him. He was like, okay, well, don't hang around too long. So, yeah, So it's a thing that happens. So you just want to make sure that you're there legally. If you're in someone's home while they're not home, I recommend either having, well, we keep the client at the house if possible, but if they leave, we usually make sure that we have like a signed statement from them and they're a phone call away in case someone tries to accuse us of trespassing. So another thing you want to keep in mind is the safety, like how safe is the structure. If you get to go to a really old place, that's amazing. But at the same time, if you're about to fall through the floorboards with every step that you take, might not be the greatest place to go. We're getting ready to go to the Henry River Mill Village next month, and there are places like we can't walk into. Now, it's land, so I mean, it's all outdoors and stuff, and it's a ghost town, so you have these abandoned houses. There's like certain ways that you can go into each house. Like you have to step on a certain board, and if you step on the wrong one, or if there's more than one person in a certain area, it might fall through the floor. So that's why you have to sign those liability waivers they give you. But you have to know like what you're getting into. Also dust. Inhaling dust is a big issue. And unfortunately, speaking as someone who has asthma and has loved ones with respiratory issues, that big old mask that Zach wears on Ghost Adventures ain't gonna do squat. I'm trying to not cuss, but yeah. Especially if you're wearing the mask wrong or incorrectly, unless you're some sort of professional that deals in this every day, I mean, you have to decide if that's worth it. And the thing that stinks, guys, is you can do all these things like in your checklist and things will still mess up. For example, we were at Old South Pittsburgh Hospital 3 or 4 years ago. I got really sick after I investigated there. Like I'm talking like I had like bronchitis and borderline pneumonia. My other team members, a few of us got sick too. And come to find out, we just found this out this year. It was when we were on our way to film Most Terrifying Places in America. Old South Pittsburgh Hospital got closed down, not just because they were not paying their taxes, but because there was a dangerous amount of black mold in the basement. We spent a significant amount of time in the basement, like several hours in the basement. So you just have to, I'm not saying the black mold caused that, because you never know. It might have just been coincidence, but that's something to keep in mind too. So a lot of these historical places that are doing ghost hunts, sometimes they're not really keeping up to par with their safety stuff. So just keep that in mind. All right. Enough about the logistics of stuff. Let's talk about communication types. How do you know when a ghost is trying to communicate with you? We have the feelings. So whether you are feeling like emotions, like from an empathic standpoint, feelings as in like emotional feelings. Then there's feelings as in like physical touch, like you feel like you're being touched. Sounds. Manifestation, whether that becomes like an apparition, like cloud smoke, that good stuff. Vocals, like you hear stuff. Yep, Amanda Shadow is a great example. Energy use, like you feel like you're getting tired. Hot and cold spots, those are other communication types. And one could say they're manifestation types too, but I call them communication types. Now, say for example, if you're in a room full of people and you're doing an EV, I'm talking to people like y'all know what this is because you guys are, most of you from what I'm seeing are experienced. And let's say Amanda starts feeling like someone's touching her. Should I keep going through the line of questioning, meaning should I keep asking the questions, or should I switch it over to Amanda since she's feeling stuff? What do you guys think? Yep. Switch it over to Amanda. Because obviously they have whoever is there has a vested interest in her. So I'm going to say, Amanda, you need to, Amanda, ask a question. Actually, Amanda, I think you've seen me do this to people, because I can talk, or my other people can talk all you want, but if Amanda's the one that's getting touched and she's hearing stuff, then obviously they want to talk to Amanda. So it's all about reading the room, and I'm not talking about from a psychic standpoint. Questions. What kind of questions should you ask? At the end of the day, we all want to talk to the ghosts like people, because guess what? They are people. I find that the communication between the living and the dead, it shouldn't be that vastly different from how you talk to people. Now, granted, for example, if you're talking to somebody with a mental illness, you're going to address them differently than you would than somebody who does not have a mental illness. Or if someone has Alzheimer's, you're going to address them differently. So it all comes back to reading the room. And you want to think about how you want to be approached. I can't tell you how many times I've, because we get a good amount of people asking us for advice a lot, especially if they hit a wall or they experience a lot of aggression with their investigations. If you go into somebody's home, whether that person used to live there or they find that place is their home, if you go in there provoking and getting really aggressive, I mean, how's that spirit going to respond to that? Are they going to be like, you're right, maybe I should, respect boundaries and, leave this place? No, there's a reason why we hear get out all the time or get out. That's my favorite one. And I like to go with the perspective of talking to them as living people as opposed to being dead. Like, you're dead right now, I don't like to approach it that way, because I find that causes a wall, especially when you ask, like, do you know if you're dead? And no offense to anyone here that uses that question, I find, especially if you open with that question, it comes across, I don't know, one, if they don't know they're dead, then they're going to be going through an existential crisis while you're trying to talk to them. It's like, wait, am I dead? What? No, I'm not dead. Am I dead? It could cause something like that. Or they're going to be like, duh, I know I'm dead. So I find that question to be off-putting for me. So I try to avoid it as much as I can. And plus, I mean, would you go up to somebody who has depression and say, do you know you're depressed? Like, I'm trying to figure out another context to ask this, another question you could ask, like, or if you're, exhausted all the time because you're a parent and you sleep like 2 hours a night, like, do you know you're tired? Hey, Amanda, hey, did you know you're angry? Like, so when you flip it around and look at that question from that standpoint, it changes a lot. So I find that do you know you have cancer? Like, I actually had someone ask me that when I did have cancer, and that was fun. And I did not receive that question well. Anyway, so yes, Michael, you do have to be original these days. So I don't like to ask that question. If I hear someone ask that question, I give them the eye because I'm like, no. So you want to talk to them as if they're still alive. Now, you can ask about their life, and if their death does come up, I let them bring it up. Or I'll say something like, hey, what was your life like? Because it's, it comes from a standpoint. Does the tone of your voice matter? Oh, yeah, I think so. Because there's an exercise. Like, I went to the park today. 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 So, depending on what you emphasize, it's going to change the meaning. So, yeah, I think the tone of your voice matters, because I think your tone does express intent. So, especially if you're asking, I don't know, for those of you who have investigated with me, you know that I take a very informal approach, because I don't know, I do it as if I'm just making a new friend. Not that all the ghosts are my friends, but as if I'm trying to get to know somebody, like you met someone at a party and you want to get to know them and you want to know who they are. Yeah. So, oh gosh, Amanda, don't even bring that up. Anyway, not going to go into more detail for that. So, and then if you're dealing with a haunting that has an inhuman entity, the way that you're going to approach that is very different. Obviously, you're not going to be like, hey, what was your life like? Hey, who was the president at the time? You're not going to be doing that. The things are going to change. You could say inhuman entities, some of them see them as demons, or they could be like fae, woodland spirits, or tulpas. That the way that you address that is completely different. I find I have to switch gears, and you want to be, I would say, the shortened version of this, elementals. The shortened version of this, maybe I can do an extended one time. You want to take a humble and respectful approach, even if you're dealing with something like inhuman that is evil. If you're dealing with something that is inhuman and evil, and you want to deal with it from a religious standpoint, get a religious official involved. That's all I'll say about that. Do not pull an Ed Warren in the movie The Conjuring and do your own exorcism. That was for Hollywood. All right. Let's keep going. Okay. Let's talk about equipment. This is the biggest question I think maybe we get. Do you need to spend thousands of dollars on equipment? The answer is no, you do not. But there's also an addendum to this question. What do you want to do with the evidence? I don't like to say evidence. I like to call it data, because evidence insinuates something that we may or may not be able to prove. What do you want to do with the data that you collect? So it depends on what you want to do with it and what kind of experience you want to get. I find for me, I need something more than it. And exactly, Michael, depends on what gear you use. And it's going to depend on, do you want to go from the perspective of getting all the data that you want to collect for presentational purposes, like you want to put it out there to the public, science community, and whatnot, or do you just want to have that personal experience for yourself? So tech basics, I would say this is down basics. If you're completely broke and have no money, but you want to go on a ghost hunt, take a pen and paper. I'll go into more why in a moment. If you got 50 to 100 bucks, look into an audio recorder, maybe a camera, maybe not your cell phone. Audio recorder, some sort of camera, and pen and paper. And I'll go into more details onto what kind of specific of equipment. I'll give you an idea of what APS uses. Know what your equipment is made for. An EMF meter is not made to detect ghosts. It is made to measure EMF levels in the area that you're in. So there's technically no substantial is the key word, proof that EMF meters detect ghosts. Now, if you believe that fluctuations in EMF may signify the presence of a ghost, then that's awesome. Then you'll use that EMF meter to gauge the differences in the environment. So, and that's how we, and that's kind of how we use our equipment, is we use it to measure abnormalities in the environment and changes in the environment. Yep, exactly. Michael's microwaves originally. So you want to know what your equipment is made for and how your equipment works. I think one of the most frustrating things I've seen was from a group that has a piece of equipment. They don't know how it works, and they took out like the basic functioning of how it's supposed to work because they thought that the sounds that the device was making was annoying. So they basically, took out like the mechanics for those sounds to happen, when those sounds are what tells you what's happening in the environment. So I'm being really big on purpose because I think a few people here might know who the group is. And it's incredibly frustrating because I'm like, no, that's not what you're supposed to do. So knowing how your equipment works is the basics. It's like the teams that are using the Kinect cameras to, to see if they can find like a ghost or find the outline. The Kinect camera, basically, it's supposed to track like your body movements because, they have these workout video games now. And somebody thought it'd be a good idea to use it for ghost hunting. I don't want to say it's a terrible idea, but at the same time, that thing can see a ghost in my vacuum cleaner. So, and plus with Ghost Hunter, when you put the Ghost Hunter brand on it, it like triples the price. Like I think I've seen those cameras go for like almost like 4 figures now when it's like $100. So you want to know what it's made for and how it works, because if not, you're going to be just kind of learn your craft. Most don't get it. Preach it, Michael. Anyway, so audio recorder. If I started out with a $25 Olympus recorder, I still use a $25 Olympus recorder sometimes, but let me show you what I do use on the really fancy stuff. This is a $700 Rode microphone. I use it for singing, but I also use it for like ghost hunting because let me tell you, this can pick up some awesome stuff. I also have a hat that has 6 microphones on it. I got it from my friend in Canada who does audio stuff. And let me tell you guys, the way that this box works, I mean, I can hear a moth fart. Like, it's so sensitive. Yeah, the Tascam DR40 is great. With my hat, the only thing is I have to be very mindful of what's happening in the neighborhood because I can hear dogs bark down the street. No, I'm not taking this to Henry because there's no outlets, and I do need an outlet and a computer because basically what I do is I bring my laptop and stuff and open up Audacity and I hit record and then I walk away. I will take this on our active client cases. But anyway, so the hat, the 6 microphones, I've caught some really crazy things on there too. Stuff that doesn't make sense when you look at it. I actually picked up a little girl ghost telling us to not leave when we were doing a house tour. Like, it was heartbreaking. This little girl says, "Don't leave." So anyway, yeah, which was crazy. Yeah, we might have cried after we heard that. So before I go into cameras, so a big thing you want to think of, what is the most important part of an audio recorder? Mm-hmm. Yep. You definitely want to look at I would say microphone quality. The sound waves it's picking up, I'm really making this 101 style. You really want to look at how it's recording, because if you have a microphone that's picking up a lot of static and white noise, you're not going to get a lot of really good quality recordings from that. What we do, because we still use like the smaller recorders when we're doing, when we're stationing up our equipment in different places, we like to put our recorders on sponges. And that way it tones down, like if people are bumping into things, or oop, I just totally messed up my little condenser mics, phantom power. Yeah. So you definitely want to look at your microphone quality. Now, keep that in mind when you are recording stuff. And ironically, I would say if you really want to look at different suggestions and whatnot, look at what podcasters record with, because that's really good quality. And I'm a podcaster too, so that's where I got a lot of that experience from. Cameras. There are so many different cameras. We use cameras for video recording. There's point and shoots. DSLRs, night vision, flare, which is, you know, thermal cameras and whatnot. We use cameras for video recording. I have 2 camcorders, like handheld night vision camcorders. I don't like to use those a lot because it's like, you know, no matter how steady you think your hand is, it's not. That's probably the biggest thing I want you guys to take away from this. Unless you have it on a tripod or you got a selfie stick, your hand is not steady. So, oh, good, Tammy. I'm glad. So point and shoots. I have a love-hate relationship with those. And I'm talking like the $10 to $75 range point and shoots. DSLRs, in my opinion, I think are superior to if you want to do like paranormal photography. Just because your quality is going to be a lot better, meaning like you can blow up the picture. Like say if you caught something really like, that's weird, you can blow it up and your quality won't diminish, because as you blow up a picture, I mean, take a random picture off of your Facebook page, download it directly from Facebook, and then try to zoom in on like your ear. It's gonna be like, ooh, Canon 80D, nice. It's gonna turn into like this skin colored cloud in like like when you zoom in 3 times. We use Nikon, Michael, so I don't know if we can be friends. Just saying. Just kidding. So I like DSLRs because of the quality. The photos are gonna be. Oh, Amanda. Amanda's a Canon too. Okay. Me and Beth are Nikon users. Anyway. I like Nikon. Brian, cell phone cameras. I mean, they've got, okay. I have a Samsung S8. I will say the pictures I can take on those are really good. But at the same time, I'm kind of, it still doesn't measure up to a DSLR. Although Beth does have a camera that she uses for her vlogging. If you guys have seen our team photos, the one with just me, Amanda, Beth, and Maeve, that was taken on her vlogging camera, and the quality is incredible. So the world of cameras has improved quite a bit. What am I doing on time? Holy crap. This is going not as quickly as I thought it would, but that's good. The flare camera, that's thermal imaging, meaning it's like measuring out like temperature. That's good to have if you can afford the price tag. They are very expensive. You want to look at something with night vision as well, night vision capabilities. I'm going to start moving a little bit faster. So ITC devices, I'm mainly talking about like ghost boxes, shack hacks. I mean, we have the Echo Box app. Flare One is affordable. That is true. So things that are using electronics to communicate. There's a lot of really good ITC Facebook groups on there, on the internet, that give you a lot of support. Even I find a lot of good information from the EchoVox Facebook group, even though I'm so skeptical of that app. And then I like to call this reactionary devices. So I'm talking like EMF meter, the REM pod, the periscope, where you have to be like, you know, something has to be close to it to make it go off. I find them useful still. I have had a REM pod for 6 or 7 years. 6 years? I only saw it go off for the first time 2 years ago. So for me, that is worth it, because I've seen it sit in those fancy EMF detectors. I had the REM pod for several years before I ever saw it go off for the first time, and I thought the REM pod was crap. And then what happens? Hey, it goes off, even though there's like no explanation for it to go off. And oh, I also forgot the Ovilus. I have mixed feelings about the Ovilus, but that's a conversation for another time. Historical research. The biggest debate, before or after. I know some people who like to do their research beforehand. I know some people who do it after. I can't do that. I have to do it before. How we do it at APS is the historian and the director, so me and Beth, we do the research and we share findings with specific investigators, and we keep our psychic mediums in the dark. Why do we do that? Well, one, we want to make sure our psychic mediums aren't tainted with as much as possible. But we also want to have something to talk about when there is a reaction to something or we need to trigger a response. So if we know that, for example, at Trivia Clinic, Majesty's favorite song is Itsy Bitsy Spider, we know to sing Itsy Bitsy Spider. If we didn't do any kind of research on that, then we wouldn't know, and we'd be sitting there in the dark wondering why Majesty doesn't want to talk to us. And if we do get a reaction, I think one of the biggest things that happened with the Trivia Clinic was, not this last visit, but the visit before, Mrs. Trivett was an opera singer, and she loved singing opera. And she came in, and we started playing La Boheme. We played Musetta's Waltz, and we were getting responses. So knowing that thing about her, which isn't out there in the mainstream internet, literally found out through like interviews with people and looking through the newspaper archives, we learned about that and we were able to use that. So that's why, so if you don't want to do research beforehand, make sure at least one person on your team has, because you want to know what to talk about. This is a big one, accurate historical research. Don't take the first page at face value, meaning when you Google a location, I tend to not take, okay, so I take the locations website with a grain of salt, because we have found gross inaccuracies with a lot of places. Like sometimes the one ghost that's supposedly haunting this location was actually based on like 3 people, and one of them had the name of the ghost, and it's crazy. So, and actually, believe it or not, guys, if you find like the actual historical records and you use that to talk to the ghosts instead of what you found on that one website on Google, you actually get a lot more responses. And actually, the reason why we even hit Travel Channel's radar was because our historical research videos were different than what they had been finding online. So that was one of the biggest reasons why they wanted to talk to us more, and that opened up that opportunity. Because I'll be honest, a lot of these historical locations, these public investigation places, they amp up their ghost lore to obviously bring in more people, but unfortunately they are grossly inaccurate sometimes. So you want to look up historical records, talk to the public. The next class is going to talk more about how you access historical records and doing all that research and using genealogy. Me and Beth are really big into genealogy, so that's why we love this so much. Utilizing social media and resources. Believe it or not, social media is a great place to find, especially if you're looking up a historical location with specific people. A lot of times you can find their descendants on Facebook, and I'm not kidding with this. Or you can find someone who knows who owned like the house beforehand. Like, I never thought I'd be saying like Facebook is a great place for historical research, but if you need to find the connections with people to a location, Facebook is actually really interesting. I've learned a lot this year, actually. Okay, dealing with psychic mediums. So I have a love-hate relationship with psychic mediums. I have 3 on my team. I don't know how that happened. I do make them read me, and yeah. Anyway, so you want to find a balance between using psychic mediums and not having them take over your investigation, because that can happen really quickly. You can have a medium really start to take over the investigation and dictate what happens in an investigation, because obviously they're the ones talking to the dead. And we tend to give that power to the medium and let them like decide what's happening. Please don't do that. The way I do my stuff is this. I don't don't want to say I put a gag order on the psychic medium, but I kind of do. And I'll check in with them and saying, okay, what do you feel? How do you think this is going? Like this kind of thing. What are you reading? I have them read the place before anyone else goes in. And I'll tell them if they're right or wrong, because I don't want to misguide them or send them down the wrong path. Screen your mediums. Even if you're going on a ghost tour and you just met the person for the first time, you want to screen them because you want to know if you can trust them and trust their intuition. It can be tricky, especially if you have a medium with a strong personality that's trying to dictate the investigation. If you're under someone else's guidance, go talk to that person saying, hey, I think X, Y, and Z, might be giving the wrong message right now. I know that they don't mean to. You have to be diplomatic whenever you do these things. But I mean, here's my thing. If I'm paying $100 to be at a location overnight, I want to make sure I have a good experience. So just getting to know them, or if they start reading you, one thing you can really tell a personality of a medium, if they start reading you without your permission, that's a big red flag. That's a big red flag. And you want to watch for cold reading, meaning like, I could read this room right now. There is an elderly person with the last name that ends with I have a message for them, say things like, I think someone's grandmother is here. My grandparents are gone. So, it could very much be me, so you want to look at their redirect, or want to look at how they redirect things. You want to avoid being misled at the end of the day, and you want to watch their reactions to being wrong. If they find out they're wrong, and they take it with grace, then that's a good thing. If they don't, then to maybe not hang out with them. So I feel like mediums can be useful, but it's a matter of setting clear boundaries, so to speak. Now, traditionally, ghost hunting process, you have the investigator, a tech person, and a medium. That can be challenging, but Hans Holzer really cultivated that idea of having a medium and an investigator, and having the medium tell the investigator what's happening. Exactly. And that's the other thing. Little side notes, you want to make sure your mediums are good investigators, meaning like they know how to try to they need to know how to debunk things, because oh my god, every time a medium sends me a picture of a dust orb, I'm like, no showboating, that's a big one. Oh my gosh, we could do a whole class on this. Anyway, so I don't mind using a medium. I actually call certain mediums for certain cases, for when we do residentials. That's a whole other thing. Anyway, so what we do for APS is we find a location. We do historical research before and after. So let's say if a name pops up that we weren't familiar with, we'll try to look up that name and see like how it might relate to that location. You want to do a walkthrough if possible. Most locations will do a tour of the place before you investigate. Same thing with a client, you can do a walkthrough, or let's say if you're investigating Moundsville and you can't get there till the day of, try to get a full floor plan. I actually like to do a floor plan with all of my investigators if possible, when we do residentials, and I have them mark on the floor plan where they have experiences. And then they give me their floor plans afterwards, and I look and see if there's any consistencies. I'll also do that with the medium when she's doing her walkthrough. She marks on the floor plan where she has experiences, or where she reads things, and then I'll compare it to what we experienced during the investigation. So that's a big thing, because we do want to. Oh my God, St. Albans is such a mess. So, and that's just something you want to do, just, if you want to find consistencies and whatnot. And you want to decide what to bring. Sometimes you don't need your full arsenal. Sometimes you need your full arsenal and then some, and then borrow some. And you want to figure out how much time you have at the location. All right, how did I do on time-wise? anyways, hopefully I'm doing okay. All right. Questions to ask a location. Yes, there are things you need to ask a location. A big thing is safety. How's your floor? How's the dust? Is there back guano anywhere? Do you have a first aid kit? Always bring a first aid kit no matter what. You know, you should ask your team, hey, anyone have issues? Anytime now I go on investigation, I make sure at least one of my investigators knows where my insulin is and knows where my glucose tablets are. So if I fall on the floor, they know how to check my blood, and they know like what either they need to give me a shot or a glucose tablet. You know, that kind of thing. So making sure, you know, if you're hosting a group ghost hunt, find out if anyone has medical issues. Make them sign that liability waiver. Yep, droppings are a big issue and very dangerous. You want to also ask about electricity. One is you need to know if you need to plug stuff in, and two, you need to know so when you have your EMF meter out, you know what might be making it go off. Bathroom access. I can't tell you how many times I've been to a location and there's not a bathroom on the premises, or the bathrooms don't work. St. Albans is a big one. There's no electricity and there's no bathrooms at the actual place. You have to walk to this other part to use the bathroom. You have to walk down to their little HQ where their little gift shop is. Sleeping accommodations. Are you planning on sleeping there overnight? If so, what are you going to sleep on? Are you going to sleep on that dirty floor with all the paint shavings, with all the peeled paint? Or are you going to sleep at a nearby hotel? When we stayed all night at Old South Pittsburgh, we couldn't help but notice that all the doors were open. And we're like, okay, we got about $1,500 of equipment between like the 6 of us. You know, we all have our wallets and, you know, all this stuff and checkbooks. And, you know, we're sleeping in this building with all the doors open and it's raining outside. This is great. And also you want to see if you can interview witnesses, like people who've been there before. Do they have like a support group or a website or social media page where people share their experiences? Or will there be witnesses there to help you out with, you know, what they had encountered and what tips they have? After the ghost hunt, this is the fun stuff. Going through your data. If you go on a 10-hour ghost hunt and you have 5 devices, you potentially have 50 hours of review to go through. Potentially. There's little shortcuts you can make. If you know how to read sound waves, that's a big thing. I've managed to find with certain devices, the way the sound waves look, I can pick up on, not necessarily an EVP, so to speak, but if something doesn't look consistent or correct, then I'll look at that sound wave. Timestamp everything, that's a big one. You also want to make sure your devices are set to a similar timestamp so that when you do write down on your piece of paper or on your phone or however you record your experiences, you have a timestamp to go back to so you can, you know, so you can go to when you heard that weird sound coming from the attic or when you thought you heard someone, you know, sing. Writing notes is, for me, that's important for me because it saves me a considerable amount of time. But also, at the end of the day, you need to sometimes accept the fact you might be sitting down for many hours going through your data. This is where having a team or having friends helps. With APS, we have team members all over the country. We have like 5 in San Diego still, and we have 2 in Pennsylvania, and they actually help with our review. So, which is good because you get an unbiased ear or unbiased eye on your stuff. And if they pick up the same things that you picked up on, that's something. And then they're sharing, if you want to share stuff on social media, YouTube or on your website, just be prepared for people to be either receptive or not so receptive. It is a lot of work. We do like we do things like once a month where we'll all get together and we'll get a bunch of snacks and we'll just go through stuff. It's easier to do it with friends, but you know, sometimes you have to do it by yourself. All right. Any questions? Wow, I'm surprised I got through that in like an hour. You guys are welcome to use the hand raising. Oh, yep, there's a raised hand. Let me figure out how to get to it now. There we go. Raised hand. How do I look? How do I find you? Raised hand. If I can figure out how to find it. Tascam is a good one. No, I don't want Q&A. Olympus makes good stuff. This is really perplexing. I cannot find how to access the raised hand. That's great. Let me hit stop share real quick. All right. Laura Lynn raised a hand. Oh, there it is. Okay. Laura Lynn, did you want to speak? Oop. Oh, that's a good question. If that is Sharon, if that is what you believe in, then yeah, use the religious medals. If you don't believe in it, then don't use the medals because they won't be useful. So at the end of the day, it's all about your faith and what you believe in. So, all right, real quick, it looks like Laura Lynn has a question. Laura Lynn, I think you should be unmuted. Go ahead.
Hey, okay, so what did you teach the ghost that you were talking about earlier with Amanda?
Mm-hmm.
Did you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you.
Yeah, okay. What did you teach the ghost? Like you taught a ghost how to do something?
I taught a ghost how to cuss.
Well,
and
great.
I did it hooked on phonics style. Like I actually very phonetically broke down the word for the ghost, and then they sprouted it back to me on the Echo Box. Yep.
Great.
That's pretty much it. Good question.
That's cool.
And actually, I did pick up on it in that same room on my audio device too, which is great. And it's a different voice than what was on the Echo Box. So I'm like, good. So now ghost hunters are going to start reporting that they hear that word in that room. That's, oh my goodness. Anyway, what did I do? Anyway, thank you, Laura Lynn.
Sure.
All right. Good. Let's do that. Okay, let me, how are we doing this? Okay, Laura Lynn Tate, disable talking. Okay, good. All right, oh, 2 more Q&As. Oh, it's both Laura Lynn, so we're good. All right, so I am corrupting the ghosts. Well, when you have a ghost cussing at you and they're using like rated PG-13 cuss words, it's like, and then they call you a prude. It's like, okay, well, I'll teach you some cuss words, you know. Oh, no. But what's really going to be interesting is if future teams go to that same location in that room and then they start reporting that they start hearing that cuss word, you know, what does that mean? What does that mean? So that's something interesting to keep in mind, y'all. You know, it's for science. It's for legitimacy, you know. Anyway, let me go back to that one slide we were on. Okay. Any other questions? Fun times. Okay. Cool. All right, folks. So class number 3, I believe it's the historical research and genealogy class. That will be taking place on Thursday at 9 o'clock Eastern time. I will be back to my normal setup, so hopefully we won't have the tech issues that we had this time. Feel free to like our Facebook page. We do have a smaller Facebook group, 700-ish members, but not all of them talk. So, you know, if you want a lot of attention from APS, that's the one to go to. The post-class survey will be sent this week too. So basically just to get your perspective on how you liked the class, any improvements that could be made, X, Y, and Z. If you haven't checked us out on Cursed Towns on Travel Channel, there's a few ways you can do that. There is an app called Sling you can use to watch the episode. It's going to air again on October 21st at 3 p.m. And I also found out it's going to air again on October 29th at 1 p.m. So it's going to air a few more. It's going to air like 2 more times now, which is cool. So yeah. And if you need to get a hold of me, then feel free to email me, find me on Facebook. I'm going to go to bed because I turned into a pumpkin about 20 minutes ago. Oh, thanks, Michael. Yep, tell your friends about it too. This recording will be up, I would say, in like 24 hours. It should be about 24 hours. The recording will be up. Yeah, that's pretty much it. Cool. Thank you guys for coming to class. Thanks for hanging in there. And if you feel inspired, you know, get in touch with us on Facebook or email, and hopefully I'll see you all next time. Well, thanks, Amanda. Bye, folks. All right.